People love to tell you genetics are everything in fitness. Or he looks like that because he's got broad shoulders, a tiny waist, great insertions, great muscle bellies. And if you don't have those, well, sorry, mate, game over. Better luck in your next life. And if you really believe that, then you will give up before even trying. But what if I told you there is a way to outsmart your genetics? Build an aesthetic physique that will turn heads, even your own, without having won the genetic lottery. By the end of this video, you'll see why having bad genetics will be the biggest advantage you've ever had. Serious. I'll share the exact framework I used to go from this to this. And trust me, it's not what you think. And before we begin, make sure to subscribe because I'm doing a massive giveaway at 10,000 subscribers. When I first stepped into the gym, other than being absolutely terrified, I genuinely thought that I was cursed. Calling myself skinny was an understatement. I also had narrow shoulders, a concave chest, a concave ribcage, and a waist that somehow looked wider than my shoulders. Basically, the exact opposite of what you would consider an aesthetic physique, a V-taper, and all of that. One of those physiques on the magazine covers. And people noticed. Strangers made comments all the time. The way I was bullied for it. I'm not here to play the victim, but damn, it was tough. Anyway, I lost count of how many times I've heard, this is not for you. And I believed it. For years, I thought, maybe they're right. It doesn't matter how hard I work. It doesn't matter how long I'll train for. I will never look the way I want to. I will never look aesthetic. What I didn't know is that what I thought was my limitation actually pushed me to learn the game on a much deeper level. It forced me to study and understand the science of it, the biomechanics, the hypertrophy, the nutrition, the recovery, and even the psychology, which we'll get to later on in the video. I had to build my physique like an architect builds a cathedral, for real. And look, I'm no Chris Bumstead. I don't have the best physique in the world, but I'm happy. I'm happier than I've ever been. And that's the difference. Guys with great genetics, they don't have to learn all of this. They can train half-assed and they will still look decent. For us, we need to learn the art of transformation, which is actually one of the best things you can learn in life. And that's why so many of my clients with bad genetics ended up looking better than the gifted ones who never really had to learn what discipline was or never really had to learn how to build. It's like this. Imagine you were rich, you never had to learn how to make money. But if you were poor and you really learned the skill of making money, that's when you become unstoppable. Probably not the best analogy, but you get what I'm trying to say. But before we go deeper, let's define what aesthetics even means. It's not just about size. It's not about being the biggest guy in the gym. It's about symmetry, taste, alignment, proportions. And there's actually science to this because the so-called golden ratio actually comes from ancient art. It's what the human eye naturally finds attractive. The narrow waist, the broad shoulders, the big arms and legs, the balance and the symmetry. Here's where your genetics might give you a starting ratio, but your training and nutrition will change everything. For instance, if your shoulders are narrow, you can add visual width by training your side delts, your upper and your lower lats. If your waist looks thick, losing body fat will naturally make your shoulders look wider. Even your posture matters. The way you carry yourself, the way you stand tall with open shoulders and chest will make you look more aesthetic and potentially bigger as well without gaining a pound of muscle. And by the way, this could easily be another 2 hours video on how confidence affects posture and vice versa. But yeah, start carrying yourself with pride and watch how much happier you feel as a result. All right, let's get practical now. Let me give you 3 actionable steps. Step 1, identify the areas of improvement. This isn't about hating yourself, it's about being objective. And we always have the tendency to pick ourselves apart. This is why usually this step is best being done with a coach or someone that can look at you objectively and give you directions on what's best to do. But the idea is to take some proper starting pictures, ideally with great lighting coming from in front of you. If the lighting is coming from behind you, we'll only be able to see your silhouette. Then analyze your physique without judging yourself to figure out what are the areas that need a bit more attention to actually build the shape that you're after. Step number 2, biased training blocks. So we only have a limited amount of recovery capacity. This is important to understand because we can't just double up on everything. We can't just maximize everything at once. So what can we do? We can rotate phases. 8 to 12 weeks training blocks where you bias your arms or your shoulders or your chest or your back and so on. For example, if you have narrow shoulders, you might run a training block where you train delts 3 times a week, since they usually recover faster than the average muscle group anyway. You do side raises, a hell of a lot of side raises. In fact, it's mostly what's going to build more of that width from that front view. Overhead presses, rear delts, and so on. Or another example, if you want to prioritize your arms, you can train them multiple times a week, doing various different exercises. And by the way, you most likely need more than 8 to 12 weeks to improve on your ratios and imbalances. So if you don't get there after a single block, don't despair. This is absolutely normal. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. Building muscle, which is essentially what you're doing, takes a long time. And that's okay. The most important thing is that you're heading proactively in the right direction. To give you perspective, my delts and my chest, especially my chest, always needed a lot more work. I can train my back once a week, sometimes even just twice twice a month, and it will maintain or even grow in size, but not for my chest or my shoulders. In fact, for the last 4 years, I've been training my delts twice or 3 times a week, and same for my chest. And I would say only in the last year, I started to see a substantial improvement. Step number 3, exercise selection. This is where science matters, but equally, it's about our relationship with these exercises. The so-called proprioception, the way that we connect to the movement and we allow the right muscles to take the lead. And the scientific literature in that sense is quite vast and comprehensive, and there's lots of new studies coming out every week. Again, this could easily be another 10-hour video, but let me just give you some practical, actionable points. Slow down your negatives and emphasize the stretch point. Of course, prioritize your compound lifts, especially at the beginning of the session. Progressive overload is king, making sure that you're getting stronger over time and actually building new tissue. And again, as we said, making sure that you connect with the exercise that you've chosen will make a massive difference as well. I'll give you an example. Knowing that I always struggled to build my chest, in my first years of training, I was obsessed with getting stronger on the barbell flat bench press. The OG chest exercise. Of course, if there was one exercise that would have grown my titties, it would have been Arnold's favorite. Problem was months, actually years would go by, and I wasn't only still proportionally very weak, but I kept getting niggles and pain in my shoulders. You see, with my clavicles being narrow, with my arms being long, and my concave rib cage, barbell flat bench press, at least at the time, was just a recipe for a disaster. Or nonetheless, just not the best exercise to grow my chest. Sorry, Arnold, not for me. It's only when I started to prioritize slight incline, a super incline, and dumbbell flat bench press that my chest started to respond, because the exercises agreed with my structure, and most of all because I didn't feel frustrated all the time about not making progress. Oh, and I actually started to enjoy chest day. Now, you can have the greatest muscularity in the world, but if you're covered by 25% of body fat, you won't be able to see it. So staying lean is literally a cheat code for aesthetics. At 8% body fat, up to 12% body fat, even average genetics will look sharp. Imagine your abs are visible, your waistline is tight, your muscles have a lot of definition, and your shoulders will look wider by contrast. I can't even begin to tell you how many people I've coached throughout the years that thought they needed to get bigger when they became so much happier after leaning out. It's very likely that the muscularity that you seek will actually be achieved at the back of getting leaner and gaining more definition. And I'm not saying don't focus on building muscle. I'm just saying when it comes to aesthetics, getting leaner is the fastest and easiest way to get there, as your physique will literally transform once you do that. And also it will give you the chance to properly assess your physique as it is, your proportions, and decide where you want to sculpt next. Because as we said, when your muscles are covered in body fat, that's just so much harder to do, and your judgment will be clouded. And yes, of course, this means that nutrition is a non-negotiable when it comes to your calories, your protein, the rest of your macros, building consistency, and getting lean as well as staying lean in a sustainable manner. But honestly, one of the most important things about nutrition is understanding that consistency is far more important than accuracy. Why? Because the process takes time, especially when it comes to building muscle, as we said. So when it comes to yo-yo dieting, bulking for 6 weeks, cutting for 4 weeks, it's never going to work. Commit to whatever phase you're on for enough time to actually see through with the results. But now, let's be honest for a second. A conversation, me and you. The moment you label yourself as bad genetics, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because you're basically saying, I can't win, so why bother trying? That kills progress faster than any narrow clavicle ever will. And here's the main point that I was talking about earlier. Your so-called bad genetics are actually your superpower, because they are pushing you to learn discipline. They're forcing you to train smarter, harder, and to think through with your actions, to build true consistency and to master those details that the genetically gifted ones will never learn. And once you've built your physique through strategy and willpower, you won't just look aesthetic. You become someone that is unshakable, because you didn't just rely on luck, but you've built it yourself. And that changes how you see yourself, because you stop comparing yourself to others and you become your own version of aesthetic, which is really what all of this is about. But also, I want to expand a little bit on this, because you see, comparisons are inevitable, and sometimes they are really useful to navigate through progress, as long as it comes from a place of love and passion, of course. My advice, though, is to always compare yourself to your past self. Instead of projecting yourself into a future that doesn't exist, project yourself into the past and compare. You will perceive a real sense of fulfillment, and you'll be able to grasp what you have achieved and how far you have come. And this feeling of gratefulness won't only give you a sense of joy and happiness, but it will also motivate you to push more and keep growing. That confidence radiates out of you, and it's the most aesthetic thing you can carry. Isn't that poetic? But let me summarize this into a blueprint you can actually apply. Number 1, audit your frame. Number 2, bias your training. Number 3, train smart. Number 4, get lean and stay lean. Number 5, make that identity shift. In conclusion, I've seen guys with what you'd consider terrible genetics make incredible transformations with their physiques. Not because they had perfect frames, but because they had discipline, they had a strategy, and they had a vision. So don't Don't let your story be written by your DNA. Write it yourself. And remember, the most aesthetic thing about you isn't your clavicles or your waist or your muscle bellies. It's your ability to build something beautiful out of what you were given. Now print that on a canvas and hang it in your room. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more science-based training, nutrition, and mindset strategies. Oh, and feel free to comment below what your biggest bad genetic struggle is, and I'll be happy to give you a game plan in the comments. Thank you for watching. I've been Julian Salai, and remember to be your own hero.